Landlords are at odds with Rayner over rent controls, but not in the way you might think. We're going to read into this exclusive from the iPaper, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an exclusive from iPaper with the headline that landlords are at odds with Rayner over rent controls, but not in the way you might think. So ministers are resisting introducing a blunt rent cap, but says that they are empowering tenants to appeal unreasonable rent rises. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. So not too long ago, I did obviously a piece, I covered a piece obviously regarding the housing crisis with regards to council houses. Specifically with council houses and how social housing, specifically, and how some of those councils will be selling up those homes because they're in desperate need of more funds, and the government is not giving enough funds, as we know that they're desperately in need of more money. Obviously, you can tie this to this because obviously this is about rents, and for a long time, and we've talked about this at odds on many occasions, is that the rental market has been deeply unfair to tenants, have been incredibly unfair to tenants. Now, I have stated this as well numerous times, and I'm going to state here. There are some good landlords out there. There are some good landlords who do the right thing and try to give tenants the fairest of deals that they possibly can. There are some landlords out there who are struggling to make it success of themselves, because of the housing markets and the cost of living crisis that we are in. So it's hard for some of them. There is that cases. It's rare, but there are those cases of that. When I rented, not once but twice during my life, I was very fortunate that the landlords that I had in my first 5-6 years of being under, we had very good landlords. They were very, very good. We did it through a private estate, we did it through a private estate company that managed to maintain everything, and it was very professional. It was all very good. And whenever they let us know whenever they were visiting, the landlords as well, they were very, very nice. They only raised the rents once, but this was a very long time ago. This was more than 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We're talking. And then the second rental property that we were in, we unfortunately had to move at short notice because the original landlords we were in, so we had to jump from one place to another within the space of 3 months because they were selling up the house. Nothing. It was just they've been doing this for decades. Apparently, the couple that were doing it, and I want to make this clear: they were very, very nice, and they only raised the rental price once. For us in our first 5 years. But the second place we stayed in, they tried to claim that we owed them money of some sorts after we left after a year or so. They were very, very bad. They weren't very nice to us. The rent was ridiculously high. It was problematic, is what I will say. So you have your ups and downs. Now there are some. Now, unfortunately, everyone's experience is different with landlords. Not everyone has a good experience. Most people might have just had bad experiences. Now, obviously, some people in the comments have said that that landlords are being ripped off here. I disagree. The vast majority of what I have seen and what I've read and what I've heard is that tenants are being ripped off. More tenants are being ripped off than landlords. That's not how I've seen it. That's not the majority of what I've gathered and researched from what I've seen. And especially in other areas, and then here in London, it's near to next impossible. Like some of the homes that they're literally living in boxes, just in order to have their own place. Like that's how crazy it is. So while I understand some landlords who don't like that things are becoming a bit more like that tenants are getting more in powers, well, I'm kind of like inclined to agree that we need to make sure that tenants are protected more than ever. Now, an counter argument will be, landlords will start selling up their properties and we'll have less landlords. Well, that means we have more houses, which means we'll have more homeowners. Will we not? Isn't that a good thing? Do we not want that if that's the case? So for me, it's a case of we know that there are landlords taking advantage of tenants. And there's still quite a lot of them. Even with the changes that have come in, there's still landlords who are taking advantage, and they need to be cracked down and clamped on. Those who are following the rules and that, they should be following the rules and whatnot. you should be okay. If you're treating your tenants properly, if you're treating them right, then you should be okay. I mean, there is a line of how much you should be charging them. And of course, yes, there are bills to pay and you want to make your own profit, but you shouldn't be killing them. And what I mean by killing them is by bumping up the prices so much that they literally have no money for themselves. Because that's what a lot of these landlords are doing. They are taking advantage of many tenants in their situations. And it's extremely brutal, because they're not just paying the rent. They're paying the water, the electric, the gas, and the internet. All these things add up. All these bills add up. Council tax as well. I'm sure I'm missing a couple of others there. But it all adds up. And it's very problematic. So I really am more in favour of what for the tenants than landlords. I really am. So ministers are under pressure to bring forward more radical policies to protect renters in new laws, with mounting support for a cap on the amount landlords can charge tenants. Now, do I support a cap? It depends on the housing market. I think if you're going to do a cap, it needs to be in line with what inflation is, what the wage. It depends on what the average wages are, and what the inflation is. There needs to be, if there's going to be a cap, there needs to be some real concessions for a cap. So I'm not sure if I'm fully on board with a cap, if I'm honest, but I can understand why there would be a cap. The Renters' Right Bill, spearheaded by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and Housing Minister Matthew Pennycook, will introduce a range of policies to toughen up tenants' rights and protections. So it also contains a softened version of a cap that gives tenants the right to appeal unreasonable rent increases defied by the government as rent increases faster than the market rate. Okay, that's a problem. If renters believe that this has been breached, they can challenge it at a tribunal. Now, don't really have a lot of courtrooms here right now. I don't know if people have noticed. Speaking at the report stage of the Renters' Right Bill in October, Housing Minister Pennycook argued that tougher rental controls could harm tenants and landlords by reducing supply and discouraging investment. But on Tuesday in the Commons, Labour MP spoke out in favour of toughening the bill to include a rent cap. So one MP, Paula Barker, is leading a push for changes to the bill to make the caps more effective. Belle Ribeiro-Addy, Labour MP for Clapham and Brixton Hill, had told the Commons that she was yet to hear a compelling reason for why landlords should see their incomes grow faster than people who actually work for a living, and that's a fair reason. The MP for Paul, Neil Duncan Jordan, argued that by definition market rates are already unaffordable for many renters. Only capping rent increases will give renters genuine security in their homes and stop landlords threatening vulnerable people with unaffordable rent hikes or homelessness. We need to stop landlords taking advantage. I do while I'm not 100% on this rent cap, we do need to stop landlords taking advantage of tenants. Then there has to be a line. There has to be a line. So more than 30 Labour, Green and Independent MPs backed an amendment to cap rent increases in line with inflation or wage growth. Okay, if that's in line with inflation or wage growth, then yes, then that can work, because then what you're doing then is you're not basically killing the tenant with your price increases. But the problem is as well is that, and this is a fair argument that landlords will make, well, if they're not making any money with the property, then with the business, then they're better off selling off the business. So this is a catch-22. So it will hurt the rental market. That is for sure. It will hurt landlords. The government says it's been clear that it's against rent controls and argued that heavy-handed restrictions push up rents at the start of the tendency, as well as encouraging unofficial subletting. Yeah, subletting is also a massive problem as well, because that's what some dirty landlords will try to do as well. When polled, rent caps are often enjoyed widespread public support, but landlords have traditionally been against the measures. Chris Norris, Policy Director of the National Residential Landlord Association, told the iPaper that the group agrees with the government on its opposition to rent controls. At a time when demands for rental housing is massively outstripping supply, all they would do is make the situation worse. What we desperately need are pro-growth tax measures to stimulate the supply of new, decent quality housing in the sector. Only this will address the affordability challenges that so many now faces, he said. But the new polling conducted by YouGov on behalf of the Progressive Commonwealth think tank, shared exclusively with the iPaper, revealed almost half of landlords actually do back rent caps. Almost half, 44% of the 187 landlords questioned support the introduction of a cap on the amount of rent that can be charged based on the location and quality of the property. While this is not quite a majority of landlords, 47% still oppose it. It indicates that a widening of the coalition in support of more radical rent policies. So there are some landlords out there who are in agreement of the cap. Across the entire sample poll in October by YouGov, 4,369 adults, 75%, said they supported a cap. And like I said, you need to take it with a pinch of salt whenever it comes to polls, guys. This doesn't mean all of them, it's just what those who participated in it is. So the analysis was carried out by senior research fellow at Commonwealth, Dr. Salah Helos, who said it was encouraging to see some support among even landlords themselves. This just goes to show the huge appetite for housing reform as the government faces the challenge of delivering change and raising living standards, whilst private rents continue to rise. It cannot afford to sit idle, she said. The polling found there was almost support among the general public for higher capital gains tax on second homes, 68%, and buy-to-let properties, 62%. Green Party's and co-leader Carlo Denia said the results indicate the dial is definitely moving on the issue. I think there is a growing recognition that rents are simply too high. And this just isn't harming renters, but the economy as a whole, she told the iPaper. That polling is really interesting, and I think it shows that there are many landlords who want to see a bit more fairness in the private renting sector, and can see that the spiralling rental costs are unfair and unsustainable. The dial is definitely moving on with this. While it's something that many Greens have long proposed, now others are joining us. She said there's a lot of misinformation about how rent controls work, but pointed out they are common across Europe. In Spain, rent controls were a key measure used by the government to bring down inflation, and research found that in Catalonia, the policy reduced rents by 4 to 6% without affecting supply, Denia said. The UK is lagging behind, and as a result, private rents, a share of the disposable income, less affordable here than any other European country apart from Norway and Luxembourg. There's a lot of great stuff in the bill, she went on, but it just doesn't do enough to tackle the eye-watering cost of renting. For the many, this is the main problem they face when it comes to housing. Denia is also calling for a 2-year protection period from evictions, where a landlord needs to move in or sell, tougher measures against illegal evictions, and increased powers to allow disabled people to make the adaptations they need to rented homes. The Renters Reform Coalition argues the flaw in the government policy that it links rents to market rates, which the coalition say are already unaffordable for many renters. So a spokesman for the Renters Reform Coalition campaign group says that market rates are already unaffordable with many renters who are obliged to spend a long time searching for cheaper homes and may be pushed out of their communities or end up in debt just to stay in them. While the rent tribunal may help some renters, it won't prevent a rent hike acting as a de facto no-fault eviction like many cases like these. And the poorest renters would be the most vulnerable. And I suspect, though, that those landlords who support rent caps recognises that it creates a framework for the rent increases and a predictable income. And that it supports longer tenancies, which reduces their turnover costs, he added. The spokesperson said there were concerns about the lack of awareness for an equivalent tribunal service in Scotland. The campaign group is also urging the government to launch a rental affordability commission to explore ways to make renting more affordable. Spokesman added, we hope the government will listen to this on the issue. Without a cap, a rent hike evictions loophole undermines the core aim of this bill and gives tenants more security in their homes. Unions, renter groups, and the public all support a cap on rent rises. A Ministry of Housing, Communications and Local Government spokesperson has said that our renters' rights bill will deliver a long overdue transformation of private renters by strengthening tenants' rights and banning Section 21 no-fault evictions. We do not support rent controls. We are taking actions to cap advance payments to 1 month's rent, end unfair bidding wars, and give tenants stronger powers to challenge excessive rent hikes. Boosting supply is the most effective way of improving affordability for renters, and we will continue to deliver this by building 1.5 million homes as part of our plans for change. Well, we do want change, that is for sure, and we've heard them a lot about the 1.5 million homes, and hopefully they will build a substantial amount of them over time. I say we hope that they do, guys. We really hope that they do, but we'll have to see on that. But as for the rental caps, there's a part of me is like I'm willing to see it. I get the positives for it. I get the positives and the benefits that people will argue for it, but I'm not going to go as far to say we should definitely have it. I'm more of still slightly in the middle on this one because I'm worried about how some landlords will feel about it, feeling that because my concern is that some landlords may not make any money at all, and if they don't make any money, there's no point of them having a business in it. from that point of view. But at the same time, I don't want tenants being ripped off as well. So it's a catch-22 situation is how I feel about it. But yeah, the point that they made there about having it in line with wage growth and inflation when it comes to a rental cap, that's something that's more appealing to me if you're tying it into that perhaps. But it's a lot of food for thought, that is for sure. But we do need to do something about rents, more about, yes, the government are making the right directions, but the question I have for you guys is, do or should we have rent controls? Do we need to have more rent controls? Do we need to have a cap on the amount that can be rented? Let me know your thoughts on this story and more on it down in the comment section below. If you found this video interesting or informative to you, please hit that like button, would be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or you can join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.